Prepare for A Rood Awakening.
Shalom. This is Michael Root at Ophel Gardens on Mount Moreh-Yah in Jerusalem. In the wilderness tabernacle, a huge brass laver stood between the sacrificial altar and the holy place. The brass laver was cast by melting down the brass mirrors of the women of Israel. Brass is a man-made alloy, and only the purest brass was used to make mirrors. The artificers of the brass laver used the purest brass available, refined it further, and forged it into the laver that would stand between the altar and the holy place. The brass laver was carefully polished so that the priest could look into that mirror and see if there was any imperfection in their appearance before God. They were required to stop at the brass laver and judge themselves before going to the altar and after returning from the altar. They were to wash their hands and feet so that they would be clean in their service. If the brass laver revealed that their clothing was soiled, they were required to change their garments. The brass laver on earth was patterned after the sea of fire and brass in heaven. Some of the English versions of the Bible read the sea of fire and glass in the book of Revelation, but it must be remembered that what was used for the reflective looking glass in biblical times was purified and polished brass, the symbol of judgment. It can reflect either purity or vanity. If we look into the brass and judge ourselves now, we have the opportunity to clean ourselves up and to prepare ourselves for service. If we refuse to look at our own imperfections, but simply walk away and ignore reality, we are assured that one day, on the sea of fire and brass, we will deal with those same issues, but then it will be too late to change. Join us in the Lester Summerall Television Studios, where this multimedia presentation on the Prophecies in the Feast of the Lord was recorded by the Prophecy Club. This is Bible Prophecy 201. Now, the final episode in the 26-part series on the Prophecies in the Feast of the Lord, the Sea of Fire and Brass. And so it is the sea of fire and glass in which we are gathered together in the throne room of God. There it is in heaven, on the sea of fire and glass. It says that there's a multitude that's gathered together that no man can number. And they sing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and they sing the song of the Lamb. The servant of God, Moses, the servant of God, all those who look forward to the Messiah who would come, sing the song of Moses. All those who look back at the Messiah who came, the Lamb of God, sing the song of the Lamb, and we harmonize together on the sea of fire and glass. It was God's plan from the beginning to make both one. On the sea of fire and glass we stand, and then the doors in the Mishkan, the tabernacle in heaven, open up, and out bellows fire and smoke and thunder and lightning, and out walk 7 angels that have 7 bowls of the wrath and the fury of God. And as they walk out of the temple, an angel cries out, no man can enter into the temple in heaven until the bowls of wrath are poured out upon the earth. And one after another, during the 10 days of awe, the bowls of God's wrath are poured out upon the earth. But we're not watching it because we're on the sea of fire and glass. The sea of fire and glass in heaven was typified on the earth as the sea, the brazen laver, which was made by melting down the looking brass of the women of Israel. That brass, without any flaw, without any imperfection, was melted down and made into a brazen laver that the priest, in the execution of their duties on the Temple Mount, they would go before that polished brass laver and they would look at themselves before and after going to the altar. And they would see if there was any blood that was splattered on them, if there was any of the ashes that had gotten on them, and they would look into that brass and they would judge themselves, and then they would wash themselves with the waters of purification. Just as Yaakov said in the book of James, it says that every man that looks into the perfect law of liberty is like a man beholding himself in a brass. The law of liberty means the power to choose. And you have the power to choose whether you're going to look in that brass and turn away and forget what manner of person you are. That you've got some flaws, that you've got things that need to be taken care of. You can turn around and forget it and pretend it doesn't have to be dealt with. But if you'll look into that brass now and judge yourself now and wash yourself with the water of the Word and get cleaned up now, that in the day of judgment you will not have to deal with it. If you judge yourself now in the sea of fire and brass, you're not going to have to deal with it then. And this is the sea of fire and brass in which Paul spoke, that every man's work is going to be tried. You lay the foundation, and the Messiah is your only foundation, but you better be careful how you build on it. If you build with wood, hay, and stubble, or gold, silver, and precious stone, the day is going to declare it. And everything is going to be tried by fire. Everything that you've done for yourself and upon this earth is going to be incinerated, and only what you have that you've done for Him will be left for all of eternity. It's the 10 days of awe in which we look and we see what we've harvested and realize that if I would have woken up early, if I would have planted more, if I would have planted some good seed, if I would have watered more, if I would have worked, I would have more now. But this is all that I have, and it has to last for all of eternity. This is the 10 days of awe. And during that 10 days, we don't want to be on our face saying, if only, if only, if only. Because then you can't change a thing. Now look into that brass. Now judge yourself. Because we are told that one day, at the end of that 10 days, that the cry will go out from the throne room of God as the high priest bellows out again those words, "It is finished." His wrath is finished and poured out upon the earth, and he walks out from the Mishkan in heaven and reaches into his breastplate, the high priest, our Lord, our Messiah. And he pulls out of his breastplate what he had promised us in the beginning of the book of Revelation. Those that overcome, I will give unto him a white stone. And upon that white stone, there is going to be a new name written, that only he who receives it will know that name. What is this white stone? It is the stone of acquittal. Acquittal. Not because you're not guilty, you've been acquitted. The price was paid for you. And when you get that stone and see that name on it, you know this is like the Lord's pet name for you. It's what he's been calling you. And he wraps his arm around you and says, "Good job, well done." For the next 5 days, we're on the sea, off from the sea of fire and glass, and the next days we dress for the wedding supper of the Lamb. And this is what the Lord gave us a parable, saying that a king made a wedding for his son, and at first he got nothing but excuses from all those that were invited, and said, finally, invite them all in. Then when the wedding was furnished with guests, the king came out on that day, walked among the guests, and found one of the guests that had come in, but he didn't have his wedding garments on. He walked up to him and said, "Friend, excuse me, how is it that you've come in, but you're not wearing your wedding garments?" And it says the man was speechless. There was no excuse. And the king said to his servants, "Bind him hand and foot, cast him into outer darkness. There's going to be weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth." There is going to be great regret over this. I do not believe that the Lord was telling us that one day the king is going to be real busy throwing people out. I think he was very clearly saying, don't think that you're going to drag yourself in at the last minute having not prepared. Salvation
is of grace. Reward is of works. Make no mistake about it. You will not get the same reward as the Apostle Paul because you happen to read and study a letter he wrote to somebody once. There are things that he wants us to do. He's asked us to lay our lives on the altar and live for him. This is the time to do it. We don't get rewarded for sitting in chairs or pews staring straight ahead for an hour a week. That's not what we're rewarded for. It's doing his will. And so it is that if he says, don't come in here with those stinking garments. Get cleaned up. Judge yourself now. In the day of judgment, you will not have to be judged. Then what happens now? At the end of those 5 days, see on earth what is happening. It says that 3 spirits like frogs go out of the mouth of the false prophet, the beast, and Satan, and go out and deceive all the armies of the world to gather them to the valley of Megiddo to fight against the King of Kings when he comes to take his throne. And we see that now the marriage supper of the Lamb, now as we are dressed in garments which are white, which are the righteous acts of the saints. And the angels then begin blowing the trumpets to announce the entrance into the Mishkan in heaven, the tabernacle in heaven, which is that sapphire blue sea inside the throne room of God, on which the 70 elders at one time had dined on Mount Sinai. When John sees it, when John sees the honor of being welcomed into the marriage supper of the Lamb, he collapses at the feet of the angel. He has no strength. He is supposed to write all these things down because he is supposed to be giving this testimony for the witness of the Messiah. But yet, he has no strength and he collapses in front of this angel when he sees the honor of being welcomed into the marriage supper of the Lamb. That angel grabs him and says, stand up on your feet. Don't bow down in front of me. You see this because this is the witness. This is the testimony of the Messiah. You let him know. You let him know that eye hasn't seen, ear hasn't heard, it hasn't entered into the imagination of men the things that God has prepared for those that love him. Tell them to get ready. The Spirit and the bride say, come, get ready, get your garments ready, because this, you will know that it's all worth it now. As we walk into the throne room of God, and that's where the Lord will take this cup, and everyone will take a cup in their hand, and he'll say, I've been waiting for you for 2,000 years. The last supper that I had with you, I took my cup and I said, you divided among yourselves. I will not drink of the fruit of the vine till I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. And I've been waiting all these years for you. I haven't touched a sip of this to my lips, waiting for this day. Now, l'chaim, to life everlasting. And as he takes that first sip of that wine, that is when the festivities of the wedding supper begin. It's a 7-day marriage supper, just as it's been all through the history of Israel. Not 7 years, but 7 days in the Mishkan in heaven. And at the end of that 7 days, which cannot be described, that's when the curtains in the throne room of God, then they go back and we look out over a sea of white horses in full battle array. Because it is the last great day. It is the Feast of Conclusion, also called the Feast of Leviathan, and it is the 8th day in which the groom and his new bride go to their new home. And the Lord cries out, saddle up your horses, we're going to take the earth. And as we go out from the throne room of God and we get on the back of a battle stallion in full battle gear, that's when the Lord takes off his tallit that he's been wearing during the entire marriage supper, and he takes it over to the altar and he drenches it full of blood, soaks it in blood, and he puts on him, and on his thigh it is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. It is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh on his thigh, and as that blood drenches from him, he gets on the back of his horse and says, follow me, you're not going to have to fight, watch this one. And the angels cry out, birds, get ready to eat the flesh of kings and captains and great men. And as he then comes from heaven with the armies following him, the sword goes out of his mouth and he incinerates his armies and they instantly become bird food. That's when Michael takes a chain, wraps it around Satan, casts him into a bottomless pit where he is bound for 1,000 years. And there it is. The Feast of Leviathan. Why is it called that? Because in the heavens there is a constellation which shows Leviathan, whose tail holds 1/3 of the stars in heaven, and the birds are eating his flesh. Those kings and captains of great men who have allied themselves with Satan. It is the Feast of Leviathan, the Feast of Conclusion, and we live and reign for 1,000 years. But yet, a few days of cleanup before Kislev 25, and it is the dedication of the Messiah's millennial temple upon the earth. These are the things that we're looking forward to. This is the beginning of the Messiah's reign upon the earth, in which we live and we reign with him for 1,000 years. And just as the scriptures say, that during this period of time, that Satan is bound for 1,000 years. And all those people of the nations who did not come up to fight against the Lord of hosts will come up to the Feast of Tabernacles to worship him every year. And if those heathen refuse to worship and come up to the feast, it says that it's not going to rain on them all year. So again, the Lord is saying, either we do it my way or we do it my way. Either way, we're going to do it my way, because I am reigning, and you are going to reign with me as priests and kings on the whole earth, and the whole earth is going to be filled with his knowledge. Then it says that at the end of the 1,000 years, Satan must be released for a season. Must be. For him to complete his rebellious stand, it says that he gathers together an innumerable army. Gog and Magog again come down to overthrow the Messiah in his throne upon the earth in Jerusalem. And fire comes down from heaven, and the elements melt away with the fervent heat. And now this is the end resurrection. The end resurrection of which Shaul spoke. Everyone's going to be made alive in their own time. This is the time that he will have put down all enemies. He will have conquered death, and everyone who's ever lived is going to stand before the great white throne in heaven. The books will be open. This is the time that Hitler and Mao Zedong, Carl Sagan, and all those who say that they're believers, but yet live an absolutely wretched and ungodly life, who murder people at their own discretion to maintain their thrones of power, and the governments of the world are going to stand before the King, and the books will be open. Everyone's whose name is not written in the book of life are going to be cast into the lake of fire. Everyone's whose name is in the book of life, they enter into the new heaven and the new earth. And there it is. And the new heaven and the new earth, it says that New Jerusalem comes down from God out of heaven. A city of gold, 1,800 miles in this direction, 1,800 miles in this direction, 1,800 miles up in the sky. And it says that the 12 gates through which everyone enters are the 12 tribes of Israel. There is no gate for the Gentiles. It's the 12 tribes of Israel. There is no gate for those who hate Israel. You enter in through the gates. And it says that now God makes his dwelling with men, his tabernacle with men, and tabernacles with men forever, 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 and forever. It is a forever fulfillment of the Feast of Tabernacles. And this is life eternal, that they might know thee, the only true God, and the Messiah whom you have sent. This is the purpose of life eternal, that they that hunger and thirst after righteousness will finally be fulfilled, that every tear will be wiped from the eyes, and we will tabernacle with the King of Kings, with the Lord of Lords, forever and forever and forever and forever. Our job is not to try to convert those who do not want to know the only true God, who do not want to know the Messiah, because there are those who don't want to know him now. And to spend forever tabernacling with God would be completely out of place for them. We're to cry out to those who want to know him and let him know that the Messiah has busted down the walls of partition that men have erected to keep men secluded from each other and from the heart of God. We're to let him know that our Messiah has broken down the walls of doctrines and commandments and religious rules and regulations, and he's busted them down so that we can just serve him with an open and a loving heart. He has made this provision for us. Eye has not seen, ear hasn't heard. It hasn't even entered into our imagination the things that God has prepared for us that love him. But he has given us this picture so that we would know that just before some of the greatest turmoil on planet Earth, when the day of the Lord begins, in which the blood and the fires and the pillars of smoke go up and darken out the sun, moon, and stars, when man is going to bring himself to the brink of destruction in his rebellion against God, who have said and conspired together, saying that we will break his shackles from us, we will not be obedient to him, we will not be holden by him, we will make our own rules, we'll make our own kingdoms. God will laugh, he'll have him in derision. We've got a time before us that we have to be strong. And let the feast of the Lord, especially the Feast of Tabernacles, don't forsake those assemblies, but let them encourage you more and more as you see the day approaching. When you understand the Feast of Tabernacles, that in the end, it is every year, it's just a rehearsal, looking forward to those days, the marriage supper of the Lamb, and the new heaven and earth, then you can see that now we encourage each other more and more as we see this day approaching.
This is the end of the abbreviated version of our seminar on the prophecies in the Feast of the Lord. For several years, I conducted 20-hour weekend seminars on this topic, and even with twice the amount of time, I found it impossible to communicate the depth of the Feast of the Lord or fully explore their future fulfillment. Even so, I hope that this condensed version inspires you to a lifetime adventure in celebrating the Feast of the Lord and living out our Creator's will for your life. We realize that you cannot get all of the details of this teaching by watching it once, or even 5 times. That is why we offer this entire seminar on VHS and DVD for your personal or group study. I am under no delusion that the Feast of the Lord will be fulfilled exactly the way that I imagine. But I know that the Feast of the Lord are the key to understanding the fulfillment in the prophecies of the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. You perhaps see different scenarios, and you are entitled to your opinion, whether you are right or wrong. But I firmly believe that everyone is entitled to my opinion. And I appreciate the time that we've had together to explore some of the vast wealth contained in the pages of the Hebrew Scriptures from Genesis to Revelation. We live in Israel, where we produce the television series A Rood Awakening, which is also available on DVD in English, Spanish, and soon other languages. In this series, we take you around the land of Israel to experience the scriptural accounts as they come alive in the very locations where they originally occurred. We have many seminars and individual teachings, several of which have been recorded in this ancient land of the Bible. The Sinai Connection takes you to the ancient land of Midian, where the real Mount Sinai has been discovered. We also explore the floor of the Red Sea, where the coral-encrusted remains of Pharaoh's chariots and army have been found. The mystery of Solomon's laver takes us to ancient Babylon, to explore the origins of sun god worship and how the worship of Nimrod has been inculcated into every religion on the planet, including Christianity. Join us on the Golan Heights overlooking the beautiful Sea of Galilee, where I will give you my rendition of the Sermon on the Mount, the sermon few wanted to hear. Travel with us to the synagogue at Chorazin, where we will sit on the seat of Moses and share with you what the Messiah said about not mindlessly following religious leaders. Join us on the temple steps as we teach the biblical Hebrew calendar and sit in the barley field as we answer the question, who is your unauthorized covering? And please don't forget to visit our website, www.aroodawakening.tv, where these and many more materials are available to those who help us continue our work to bring the word forth from Zion. If this series has been a blessing to you and your family, please remember those in this ministry who have no earthly inheritance but live to teach Yahweh's people around the world. Our lives are a gift to you, and we live solely on the gifts of those who are encouraged by our ministry and want to help us get this message all over the face of the earth. We invite you to join us for our next A Rood Awakening broadcast. Until then, this is Michael Rood from Jerusalem bidding you shalom, peace, and I'll see you when the smoke clears.